What do you get when you pair two of the biggest action stars of the 80s with a mega producer known for excess and an acclaimed director who wants to make an art movie? The answer is one of the most expensive and excessive films of the 80s, but one that will always be beloved because it pairs two buddy cops named Tango and Cash.
This is insane, you know.
Very insane. Think he's telling the truth?
I don't know, but it's not raining, and he's standing in a puddle.
Disgusting.
You know, Potato Head, you just fell for the oldest routine in the book. Bad cop?
Worst cop. Did you sleep with my sister?
Oh, I don't believe you.
Did you bump uglies with my sister?
Bump ugly.
Did you?
Hey, listen, I was so drunk, I don't remember, okay? Come on, worst cop, we're late.
The late 80s were a rough time for Sylvester Stallone. In late 1989, he was coming off of three movies that made less than expected: Over the Top, Rambo 3, and Lock Up. Of the three, the only one that couldn't be called a total flop was the third Rambo, as it made a ton of money internationally, but domestically, it underwhelmed. A surefire hit was needed, so Stallone opted to make the big-budget, popcorn action flick Tango and Cash, which would team him with another action movie icon, Kurt Russell, and would be one of the few bright spots for Stallone until launching a major comeback with Cliffhanger in 1993, because it would be after this movie that Stallone would perhaps make the biggest mistake of his career. Try comedy in not one, but two movies.
What you doing to my gun, Mom?
Nothing, I cleaned it.
What do you mean, Mom? You didn't clean it, you ruined it. I mean, you took all the bluing off it. Clorox? That's great, Mom. If I use this gun, it's gonna blow up in my hand now.
Yet even Tango and Cash had a troubled production history with a last-minute recut and reshoots that made the film exceed its budget by a whopping $20 million.
You guys are in deep shit. Oh, shit.
Really?
And it was considered a wet print when shipped to theaters, meaning it had only just made its release date because the editing was happening going up to the 11th hour. So it gives. Why was Tango and Cash such a drama behind the scenes? Enter two of Warner Brothers' biggest producers of the era, John Peters and Peter Guber. The men responsible for Tim Burton's Batman, they made big, colorful commercial movies and probably smelt a surefire hit when they signed Stallone to star in this buddy cop movie, with the genre being one of the dominant action movie trends of the 80s thanks to movies like 48 Hours and Lethal Weapon.
Tell me a story.
Fuck you.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Which makes the choice of directors questionable at best. To helm Tango and Cash, they hired Andrei Konchalovsky, the Russian director of Runaway Train. Konchalovsky had left the Soviet Union sometime earlier and was a student of directors like Akira Kurosawa or Andrei Tarkovsky. He could direct the hell out of action, one need only look at his film Runaway Train to see that, but he didn't exactly have a light touch. Somewhere during the shoot, reportedly near the end, Konchalovsky was fired and replaced by the director of Purple Rain, Albert Magnoli. If you watch Tango and Cash, with its ultra-stylish montages and musical numbers, it does indeed feel more like an Albert Magnoli film, but who knows who is responsible for what in the final cut. It's all such a mess, I feel like nobody, even the editor Stuart Baird, who essentially saved the movie, would know. DP Barry Sonnenfeld was also replaced at some time during the production, apparently at Stallone's request, by his DP from Lock Up, Donald Thorin, who also shot, of course, Magnoli's Purple Rain. Things were not helped by the fact that John Peters and Peter Guber were caught up in a brutal lawsuit with the distributor Warner Brothers before it hit theaters, and the two were slamming the studio and the press before it came out for rushing its release. Although, to Warner Brothers' credit, I think perhaps the reason they put it out so soon was that they were riding an amazing wave at the box office in 1989 with Batman and Lethal Weapon 2 huge hits. Even something like Driving Miss Daisy was a big hit for them, so I can imagine they probably thought that they could do some magic with Tango and Cash. And sure enough, the movie did pretty well at the box office.
We're on fire!
Yeah, we're cooking now.
You'd think, given how troubled it was, Tango and Cash would turn out to be a disaster, but actually it wasn't. Despite everything, the film was a decent-sized hit at the Christmas of 1989. What makes the movie work so well is that despite everything that happened off-screen, the film is a blast, with Stallone and Russell having awesome action movie chemistry.
Well, what do you think?
I think with your IQ, you're unarmed and still very dangerous.
Okay, Sherlock Holmes, if you're so goddamn smart, you tell me who set us up.
I don't know yet.
Yeah, you don't know shit.
Russell was apparently not the first choice for the role, with him only landing the part after Patrick Swayze dropped out to do Roadhouse.
I thought you'd be bigger. Opinions vary.
Swayze would have been good, but he doesn't have the same smart-ass vibe that Russell brought to the role of Gabriel Cash.
Well, if you don't make it back, and I do, I am gonna date your sister.
The casting is really interesting, as both guys were super alpha males at the top of their game, even if Stallone at this point was a much bigger star. Russell had already been in several John Carpenter cult classics, but two of those movies, The Thing and Big Trouble in Little China, had been flops, only to become classics later on. He had a modest hit in the romantic comedy Overboard opposite his partner Goldie Hawn, but in 1989 he was not a top star. In fact, he was probably best known as being the guy that lived with Goldie Hawn, who was a much bigger star than he was at that time. His stardom would come a little bit later when movies like Unlawful Entry, Tombstone, and Stargate made him a top draw, and indeed Kurt Russell is one of the most beloved actors of all time.
You tell him I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Even still, Cash is at least equal in screen time to Tango. He plays the edgier part here, with Cash the street-smart cop who rocks a Henley with the neck cut out in true 80s movie style, while Stallone is a more polished suit, being a slick cop who dresses like a stockbroker, is independently wealthy, and plays cop for excitement.
I don't understand you. You make a shitload of money, you dress like a banker. What are you doing this for?
Action.
Action?
Good old American action.
Kurt Russell's Cash even gets the love interest, Teri Hatcher, long before she was ever on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. She plays an exotic dancer named Alex, who is actually Tango's baby sister, and does a whole Flashdance style routine set to Yazoo's Don't Go, which is a very 80s moment, but also kind of cool. The movie also has a lot of fun with the homoerotic content, more so than you'd think for 1989, with both men often appearing shirtless or in tiny undershirts while the two share a memorable, funny shower scene together when they compare penis sizes.
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Relax. Soap. And don't flatter yourself, Pee-wee.
Kurt Russell even wears drag at one point. Despite the fact that at least two directors were involved, the movie holds together well as a comic book style action flick, almost existing as a spoof of the buddy cop formula. Jack Palance is the main villain, a drug lord named Yves Perret, who I suppose is supposed to be French, but he has no accent at all.
If it isn't Tango, it's Cash. Tango and Cash, Cash and Tango. These two cops are driving me crazy.
Who frames the two super cops to get them out of the way, sending them to a brutal prison that they escape from pretty quickly. However, the movie is utterly stolen by the late Brian James, who affects a Cockney accent as Palance's cold-blooded henchman.
I'll cut your bloody throat. Yank your thing out the O and tie the lovely Windsor knot for you, eh?
I don't wear ties, that's him.
Nothing in the movie even borders on realism, with Tango and Cash's railroading into a super maximum security prison kinda tough to swallow. Kurt Russell's Gabriel Cash even has a Q-like weapons guy played by Michael J. Pollard, who arms the two to the teeth in the climax and gives them a tricked-out ride to use on their assault on Perret's headquarters. The score is by Harold Faltermeyer, who was perhaps the biggest composer of the 80s, doing the soundtracks for Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun. In the end, Tango and Cash was demolished by critics, but also wasn't the box office flop that many thought it would be. Given how high the costs had gone for the film, it earned its budget back in North America and was a huge hit overseas and on video, to the point that a sequel could have happened at one point, and indeed could still happen, I suppose, further down the line, although Russell and Stallone are getting a bit long in tooth perhaps to be playing Tango and Cash still in the police force. It's definitely one of Stallone's most fun 80s flicks, with some great action scenes such as an opening sequence involving a truck full of cocaine and a gun that he lifted from pal Jackie Chan's Police Story. While it all makes very little sense, it's still a very fun flick that I give 8 out of 10 Stallones. But beware our next two installments, because we are going to dig deep into Stallone's misguided attempt at becoming a comedy star with not one, but two movies, either of which did particularly well. Oscar, directed by John Landis.
How did 50 grand change your underwear?
That's what I'm asking you!
Maybe it was a miracle. You know, like the loaves and the fishes?
And the infamous Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, starring Golden Gal Estelle Getty.
She was. You shot him.
No shit.
Yes, this was actually my first Stallone movie that I ever saw in a movie theater, so that should be an episode to keep an eye out for.